You know those couples you see and just think, yep, they've cracked the code. So comfortable together, so genuine. You start believing maybe lasting love actually exists. Ruth Langsford and Eamonn Holmes were that pair for a lot of us. They worked side by side, joked on air, sometimes bickered, like all married couples, and somehow made it all look so easy. And then, suddenly, at least, that's how it felt to everyone watching, poof, gone. 27 years, finished. Just like that. Nearly 2 years later, Ruth's finally opening up. Not the carefully worded, polite answer stuff. I mean real, raw honesty. The kind that sort of makes you pause and realize you've been there too, in some way. Seriously, her story has this quiet heartbreak that's just so deeply human, it sticks with you. Let's dig in, because this isn't just another celebrity breakup headline. It's about love, about being blindsided, about realizing your life wasn't what you thought it was. And if you've ever had your world flipped like that, even a little, you'll feel every single word. Let's rewind, because Ruth's story is way more fascinating and ordinary than most people know. She came into the world in Singapore, 1960, which already tells you her life never really followed the boring route. But her schooling happened in London, at Greycoat Hospital School. By all accounts, she was just a regular girl with a quiet drive, not the pushy, loud ambition you see on reality TV. Ruth knew what she wanted, kept it to herself, didn't bother shouting. Her break into TV, zero glamour, honestly. She started as a continuity announcer and newscaster at ITV's regional station Television Southwest in Plymouth. Not exactly red carpet stuff. Think long hours, little pay, and doing it because you love it. It was steady, pretty unremarkable, but taught her the kind of patience you only get by doing things slowly, the hard way. Then, out of nowhere, the station closed in 1993. West Country Television took over, and Ruth found herself closing a chapter with no clue what was next. If you've ever lost a job you cared about, you know the feeling. That horrible, what now? Panic, trying to look like you've got everything together. But Ruth, being Ruth, didn't stay lost for long. By 1990, she snagged a spot on Loose Women as a regular panelist. Different kind of job, way more personal, much more exposed, loads less about reading lines and more about being yourself on camera. She hung on until 2002, then stepped away for a bit. Life, right? Returned as a stand-in anchor in 2010 and jumped back in for good in 2014. Suddenly, she wasn't just another panelist, she was the anchor, sitting alongside Jane Moore, Charlene White, Christine Lampard, and Kay Adams. Meanwhile, something else was brewing. In 2000, Ruth did a few guest presenter spots on This Morning. Small gigs, not permanent at first, but by 2006, she was their regular co-host, working with Philip Schofield, and, almost under the radar, becoming This Morning's longest-serving presenter ever. That's no minor thing. It's what happens when you just turn up, do the job, and keep at it without making a fuss. Then, that same year, Eamonn Holmes joined her every Friday as co-host. What started as a work partnership, good chemistry, easy banter, that kind of on-air connection you can't fake, gradually shifted into something more personal, more complicated, and in the end, way more fragile than anyone watching could have known. But hang on, let's talk about how they actually got together. And honestly, it's pretty regular. They met in 1997 through a mutual friend, TV presenter Sally Mean. That's it. No wild Hollywood moment, no epic first glance, just two people with overlapping lives in the same room. And something clicked. Most good love stories start that way. This bit always made me respect them. Eamonn had only separated from his first wife, Gabrielle, 2 years before. They had kids, real-life complications, not just TV drama, so Ruth and Eamonn kept things quiet. Not hidden, not sneaky, just private out of respect. Respect for the kids, for the situation, and for the idea that big changes deserve space before going public. Ruth said this was what made her love him more, not less. She saw his integrity, the kind of father he was, and understood that doing the right thing even when nobody's looking is seriously attractive. After 2 years, they went public. By 2002, they welcomed their son, Jack. Ruth found out she was pregnant right before her godson's christening. She let her best friend know first since Eamonn was away. Seems small, but that little detail shows how grounded and happy they were, just building a real life. For years, they really did build something good. They tied the knot in 2010 at Elvetham Hall in Hampshire, 13 years after meeting and 5 years after Eamonn's divorce. Settled in Weybridge, made a home, made a life, from the outside. Seriously, the dream couple, took it slow, did it right, landed somewhere solid. Even when talking about each other during interviews, you could feel the warmth. Ruth mentioned Eamonn would tease her, like husbands do, but would also surprise her with thoughtfulness when she least expected it. She remembered when she was wrapped up in Strictly Come Dancing, barely giving him attention, and she trusted he got it. She believed he always would. That trust, that feeling of not needing to explain yourself, is everything in a marriage. That's the real foundation. But sometimes even solid foundations crack. Sometimes it's slow, barely noticeable. Other times it happens all at once, like the floor just vanishing beneath your feet. Things for Ruth and Eamonn started shifting around 2020. That November, ITV dropped both from their Friday presenting gigs on This Morning, bringing in Alison Hammond and Dermot O'Leary. TV is a business, sure, but reports said they were furious. And honestly, you can't blame them. This Morning was their home for ages. Their jobs weren't just jobs, it was like their personal and professional lives had fused together. Losing that? It stung. After that, their paths quietly split. Ruth stuck with ITV and Loose Women, holding on to familiar ground. Eamonn headed for GB News, running his own breakfast show. Same industry, but totally different worlds. When two people stop sharing day-to-day routines, the commutes, chats about work, little victories and frustrations, things shift. At first, it's subtle, but it's real. Then came Eamonn's health issues, which, honestly, were just rough. In 2021, Eamonn started dealing with endless back pain, not the sort you shake off, the kind that's life-changing. Turned out he had 3 slipped discs. He also dislocated his pelvis around the same time. Surgery followed, but recovery was tough. His first spinal operation was meant to help. Things got more complicated instead. By 2022, he needed another op for a broken shoulder. In 2023, a third surgery. Each procedure led to more challenges, more setbacks, another exhausting round of recovery. He didn't mince words when he described what he'd gone through. Horrendous, he said, wheelchair-bound for the most part, with every small movement requiring help, getting up from a chair, dressing, undressing, eating. Carers hovered around him all day, guiding him through every basic necessity. It wasn't just the physical dependency that weighed on him. There's an invisible toll, an emotional shift, when you can't do the things you once took for granted. It hits the person living it, sure, but it also reshapes the life of whoever is supporting them. And Ruth was that support. She really was. She sat through hospital appointments, waited during endless recoveries, handled the frustration, managed those silent stretches where pain ruled and everything else got shoved to the sidelines. She was the steady presence, quietly showing up, regardless of what the day demanded. That's probably why the ending felt so cruel. May 2024, it was official. After 27 years, they were splitting up. Ruth hadn't seen it coming. She said so herself. Out in the open, nerves laid bare. To her, it was a happy marriage, plain and simple. She believed it down to her bones, trusted the shape of her life. The realization that she'd been wrong about something so basic, something that ran through every corner of her world, left her more than heartbroken. She described herself as shattered, and honestly, there's no neat way to package that kind of loss. Picture it for a moment. You're showing up every day for someone you love, supporting them when things are bleak, believing you're building a life together. And then it turns out, at the deepest level, things looked entirely different from the other side. That's exactly what happened. Word got out that Ruth overheard Eamonn talking on the phone with another woman. Close, warm, the sort of conversation you only have when you believe you're alone. But he wasn't alone. Ruth was in the house, listening in without his knowledge. When she confronted him, it wasn't just a tough talk, it was a hit to the gut, straight through her. And within weeks, she unearthed messages on his laptop. That second discovery sealed it. There was no going back from that. The marriage dragged on for a little while longer, but the spark was gone. And, realistically, how would you find your way back after something like that? Then came the public statement. In May, a spokesperson spoke the words, "Divorce, separation, the end." After almost 3 decades, it all boiled down to a handful of sentences delivered to the press. There's something coldly understated about that. A huge history tucked into a brief announcement. Almost immediately, Eamonn stepped out with Katie Alexander, a dating counselor. Out together in public, moving on, not shy about anything. And for Ruth, caught in the fog of heartbreak, trying to piece together a new reality, the timing poured salt on the wound. Now, nearly 2 years later, Ruth is ready to talk. Her memoir, Feeling Fabulous, is where she unpacks everything. The honesty inside is raw enough to make you want to freeze in place and just absorb it. She recalls those first few weeks, devastating, not the manageable kind, the sort where you can't even see happiness in the distance, lying awake, running over everything in your mind, wondering where it all went wrong and what clues you missed. She wasn't just heartbroken, she said. She was broken. That difference matters. Losing a spouse isn't just losing a person. It's losing the future you assumed was coming. All those shared plans you'd traced out over the years, the retirement you thought you'd enjoy together. Suddenly, all of those dreams don't belong to any future you recognize. She went back to this morning after the split, the same set, the same routines, but everything had changed. No longer part of a dynamic duo, just her, with the public watching and drawing their own conclusions. She accepted, quietly, that not everything lasts forever, even though letting go of that certainty must have hurt in ways she hasn't shared. Therapy was part of her journey. She talks about it with surprising candor. Friends are lovely, she says, but they tend to take sides and comfort you. Therapists aren't there for easy reassurance. They ask hard questions. They push you to examine why you responded the way you did, look for patterns, wrestle with uncomfortable truths. For Ruth, that introspection made the difference. It helped her rebuild her footing after everything crumbled. There was a point she doubted she'd ever be happy again. The sorrow felt permanent, like waking up every morning to the same heaviness, with no sign it would ever lift. That's a feeling anyone who's gone through major loss knows well. Not just heartbreak, but a sense that normal is gone for good. But as she moved forward, Ruth realized happiness isn't something that magically appears. You make it, step by step, even if at first you're just faking it. Eventually, the motions turn into reality. Acting okay becomes truly being okay. Progress doesn't look tidy, but it does start to happen. She's not rushing into another relationship, hasn't ruled out love, but she's not seeking it either. Getting close again still scares her a bit. She feels anxious, and instead of pushing herself, she's just honest about needing more time. That's not defeat, it's self-awareness, knowing her limits, saying, not yet. She used to believe Eamonn was her soulmate, her perfect other half. Now she's living with the unexpected reality that changed everything she thought she knew. Processing that takes time. It's not something you get over quickly. It's more like something you figure out how to carry. There's this quiet detail she shared too. After their son Jack was born, she wondered about having another child. Eamonn, with 3 kids already, was reluctant. It wasn't a dramatic argument, just a gentle pause. Looking back, Ruth can see now that their dreams were never quite aligned. These small differences add up. You don't always see them happening, but in hindsight they matter. Now, with Ruth sharing her story publicly, things are getting tense. People close to Eamonn say he's unhappy, feels he's being cast as the villain, thinks Ruth's version isn't the whole truth. There's talk he might eventually break his silence. So far, he's kept quiet, but you get the sense it's getting harder to maintain that reserve as the public narrative builds. He seems to believe there's fault on both sides, that no marriage falls apart from one person's actions alone. And honestly, he's right. Relationships are complicated, layered, and the truth rarely fits neatly into one version. But whatever the details, one fact stands out. Ruth showed up for that marriage. She supported Eamonn through illness, through pain, through uncertainty. She built a life alongside him, raised a son, believed with absolute sincerity that she was living in a happy marriage, until the moment she learned otherwise. When that ended, she had to figure out her next steps, find her way back to herself. The way she's doing that, slowly, honestly, refusing to pretend she's moved on before she actually has, feels genuinely inspiring. This is what real resilience looks like. Messy, difficult, not photogenic or quick. It's hours in therapy, hard mornings, and gradually picturing a new future that isn't what you planned. She's clear about love. She hasn't given up on it. At 66, after all she's been through, her patience isn't resignation, it's wisdom. So, what's next? Nobody really knows. Eamonn's out there, living his life, dealing with his health, starting over. Ruth is processing, writing, putting herself back together. Between them is a story that's nowhere near finished. But here's what I keep thinking. Sometimes life doesn't end up the way you expected. Sometimes the people you trusted most turn out to be strangers. And that's one of the hardest things to accept. Still, as much as it hurts, it isn't the end. Not for Ruth, not even close. And honestly, that's the most hopeful thing about this entire messy, complicated story.